Scheduled too many for today, sorry. I'll have to buy you dinner, sir. Tomahawk steak. Yes, ma'am. Okay, we're about to start the hearing on 1356 FN. Representative, thanks for being sick. You weren't there, now you're there, so. Is it? Okay. Starting the hearing, go ahead, tell me about the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members. For the record, my name is Robert Ware. I have the privilege of representing Hillsborough District 13, Great Town of Hudson. I'm testifying in support of this bill to extend the statute of limitations from 2 years to 10 years to bring a private right of action before the courts when a statute has been violated by administering medical procedures and or treatments to alter a minor's gender. Why is this extension necessary? 2 recent court cases have provided substantive information as to why such an extension is needed. First, in February, Varian versus Einhorn, a New York jury found for the plaintiff awarding $2 million in damages for inadequate mental health assessment that led to an affirmation-only model of psychological care and followed by so-called transitioning plastic surgery. Just this week, on another case, SCOTUS decided in favor of a plaintiff in Childs versus Salazar. In this second case, the psychologist Childs had sought to offer psychological care other than the affirmation-only model. However, the Colorado law had forbidden the psychological talk therapy, referring to it as conversion therapy and equating this talk therapy to coercive and aversive practices, which the psychologist had never performed. The fact that both cases are the first being decided in these areas suggests that until now, the harm caused by administering medical procedures and or treatments to alter a minor's gender has not been adequately recognized within the proper legal frameworks. Regarding Varian versus Einhorn, the first case, this was the first such verdict involving gender-affirming care. Varian alleged that before undergoing a double mastectomy at the age of 16, which she later regretted, she did not receive adequate informed consent or proper diagnosis of her psychological evaluation. So why was the informed consent inadequate? She was not informed of the risks involved with the surgeries and the other hormonal treatments. The risks are and were well known. A key study was performed in 2011. I provided a copy to the committee. That study followed 324 sex reassigned persons between 1973 and 2003, 30 years. The conclusion was, forgive me, I'll read this part, persons with transsexualism after sex reassignment have considerably higher risk for mortality, suicidal behavior, and psychiatric morbidity than the general population. So despite a temporary alleviation of the gender dysphoria, the study concluded that the sex reassignment surgery alone was not sufficient to resolve the elevated risks of suicide, psychiatric illness, and so on. In plain language, Varian was likely told the surgery and treatments would fix all her problems, and she was not informed of the well-documented risks. So why is this an improper diagnosis? And this gets to really the heart of the matter, is the lawsuit claimed the defendants failed to adequately evaluate the mental health of the plaintiff. They didn't identify underlying issues. They failed to inform her of the long-term risks. She received a skewed approach where the only care the therapist offered was gender-affirming care, this singular model. This is a case of a hammer seeing everything as a nail. There are some therapists who have approached the case of gender dysphoria with the only solution being gender reassignment through a progression of social reassignment, hormonal reassignment, and ultimately sex reassignment surgery. Rather than the proper psychological treatment of a poor body image and underlying issues such as anxiety, depression, and suicidality, a one-size-fits-all solution of gender transitioning was being offered. So these young people are drowning in pain and desperation, and the only life preserver that's being offered is this gender transitioning. It is not good psychology, it's not good psychiatry, it is unethical practices of medicine. It's immoral to do harm when the power to do good is possible. And this leads us to the second case, which is relevant, Childs versus Salazar. There have been professional and institutional pressures, and in Colorado, governmental pressures to provide the one-size-fits-all, gender transitioning, affirmation-only model of care. So adolescents are given the false promise that this transitioning is a panacea remedy for their pain and suffering, and the parents and guardians are coerced into this agreement with fear and the threat of their child committing suicide. So again, I would raise the question, why is this extension from 2 to 10 years necessary? We must change the RSA to enable those who've been harmed to be able to seek redress. I have spoken with a representative and others who are aware of people within Manchester and some other areas who this has happened to. A 20-year-old person, the 2-year period, may still be struggling with and working through their identity issues. They may not yet recognize the harm that has been done to them. An extension to 10 years gives a far greater opportunity to recognize the harm and to respond as needed. New Hampshire needs to extend this private right of action so that other young people that have been harmed may seek remediation. At the current 2-year statute of limitations, the consequences may not yet be apparent. The irreversibility of what's been done may not yet have dawned on them. The consequences of never being able to fully live out their life in their original biological gender may not have fully coalesced in their conscience. They may still be trying to validate a decision that they subconsciously regret. So I urge every one of you to support this bill for their sake. Thank you for your time. I'd be glad to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding in New Hampshire, we've already, sorry about that. My understanding here in New Hampshire, we already prohibit this procedure from being performed.
Correct.
So if this were to pass, I mean, my understanding, if you talk about medical malpractice, it wouldn't apply to any retroactively. So it would only apply to new procedures, but we don't do those procedures anymore.
Well, we hope they're not being done. I mean, they have been done in the past, and this would be a deterrent against any sort of desire to override the requirements that prohibit it.
Thank you.
Yes, Senator Osha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions. One just popped up right now because you just testified that you think that you hope there are no gender reassignment surgeries being done. So do you suspect that there are medical practices happening in New Hampshire that go against this law that we passed? Do you have any evidence of that?
I have talked to people who have had those surgeries done in the past. I have not talked to someone who has had that recently. It also, I'm aware that there are people who are taken across the borders for reassignment surgeries.
May I follow up? Sure. Thank you very much. So I was here on this committee when we passed the law that you're looking for a look back on from 2 years to 10 years. And we didn't get any testimony that gender reassignment surgeries are being performed here in New Hampshire. So if we didn't have any if we didn't have anything happening prior to us passing the law, and this law would only apply going forward, what's there to look back on if we don't have any? And it only applies to things that happen in New Hampshire. We can't affect what happens across another border, as you just suggested. So this is, what would this actually what are we looking at? Since we don't have any, we have no testimony that we've had any, and this only goes forward.
In talking with the people who have tried to examine a detransitioning, they've noted that, you know, there are no healthcare codes to cover this. There are no aspects to assist with their detransitioning, if you will. So what I think fundamentally, it's should this ever occur, there is a provision to counteract it.
I'm sorry, last follow-up.
you.
Should this occur, it would be a crime.
Yes.
Because it's a crime in New Hampshire.
Yes, I would
So
agree.
I think, it seems like a hypothetical that isn't possible.
So Representative, on that train of thought, so
Yep.
we see no actual case in controversy or possibility there.
That it will ever
Are we
occur.
missing something that you're saying?
We've had people come to some of the representatives asking for these sorts of things. So,
Okay, maybe they'll testify later.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So,
We're all set. Thank
Okay,
you very
thank
much.
you.
Appreciate your testimony. Representative Catherine O'Brien, I don't see you, but you could be behind someone. She left? Okay, that's understandable. Stephen Scara? Probably said it wrong. I apologize. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Stephen Scare, Nashua, New Hampshire. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, Chairman and honorable committee members. Please vote ought to pass. A physician who chemically castrates a boy or destroys a girl's healthy reproduction system with massive amounts of testosterone should at the very least be held financially responsible. Moreover, no one can give consent when they're provided with false information. There's no such thing as a transgender child. I'm not a physician, so I encourage you to ask medical experts the obvious questions. What is a gender identity? Can they define gender without relying on circular reasoning or stereotypes? What is a boy? What is a girl? Our medical institutions are captured by ideologues who have traded medical science for an incoherent religion that teaches that a boy's soul can inhabit a girl's body, and this ethereal gender identity, not her body, is her authentic self. We can't trust them to abide by our laws. They have presented to state committees and the legislatures false information, and I've documented that in my written testimony. This law discourages doctors from continuing to harm children and holds them accountable if they do. Please vote ought to pass.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Simon Price? I'm sorry, Tim Horgan, are you in the room? Yes. I didn't see you, so I was skipping you in. Sorry about that, I apologize. So if you can keep it short as you can.
Oh, yes, I know, we're way
Awesome.
behind. I'm
Thank
Timothy
you.
Horgan from Stratford County, District 10, and so I'm opposed to this bill. I was also opposed to the underlying bill, which I think was HB 1357, which we passed. Well, I didn't vote for it, but it passed just last year, largely on party lines, and just took effect on January 1st. So I think this, and the minority of the House Judiciary Committee, I think my colleague Representative Marjorie Smith, if I recall correctly, wrote the majority opinion, but we all agreed with it. We basically just stated in terms of the debate on the floor, that this bill merely changes look-back period from 2 to 10, and 2 is probably adequate, especially given that there's no evidence that this law has been used at all. And just in general, I'm a strong supporter of transgender rights. I think this issue applies. It's very important to a small number of people, but if you're one of them or somebody you know is one of them, which is the case for me, I know several people who are trans. It's the most important. It's like extraordinarily important, most important thing in your life. And I think the trans community, to some extent, it becomes sort of a scapegoat, a distraction from other issues. So anyway, I think this bill, this is another one of those bills I think should never have gone to your side of the wall. It was just totally unnecessary, and so I see no reason to waste your time passing it. So that's
Thank you very much, Representative. Any questions? Seeing that,
Thanks.
appreciate your time. Thank you. Simon Price?
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Simon Amaya Price, and I used to be trans. I've had the privilege of working with and befriending many detransitioners over the past couple of years. I have heard stories of pain, suffering, and obvious medical malpractice. While those who have heard detransitioner stories on the radio or TV are aware of how they've been mistreated, if you really get to know them, you become aware of a frightening reality. It takes most detransitioners years to fully understand the extent of the harm they have endured. A couple of objections have been brought up to this bill with the testimonies before me, specifically having to do with its necessity. Let's say we didn't have any murders in New Hampshire. Would we still want to ban murder? I would think so. And that would just be, if we passed a law against murder and nobody was murdered, that would be an extra indication of the efficacy, the deterrent effect of the justice system working properly. Additionally, according to a series of surveys of detransitioners, it was found that the average time that their transgender identities persisted was 7 to 10 years, putting them well outside the current statute of limitations. As investigations by Trondheim and the Federal Trade Commission have found, these treatments are rushed and regularly diagnostically miscoded, making it exceedingly difficult for victims to recognize the harm and then connect it back to the treatments administered. Please pass this bill to give the approximately 8,160 disproportionately young adult transitioners in New Hampshire a chance to receive justice for the harm done to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Oshler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for taking my question. Did your experience happen here in New Hampshire? Are you a
It
resident?
happened in Massachusetts.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, appreciate your coming in today. Thank you. Claire Abernathy.
Hello, committee members, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Claire Abernathy, and I'm a 21-year-old detransitioner. And despite what has been alleged and what you may have heard, I am not being paid for my testimony today, nor was I paid for my testimony on the version of this bill which passed through the House. I live about an hour south of here, and I drove up for this hearing because this is an issue that is very important to me. I was put on testosterone a week after my 14th birthday, and I underwent a double mastectomy at 14 and a half. I've suffered severe and irreversible harm as a result of these interventions, these decisions which were made for me when I was a middle schooler. I've been permanently barred from important adult experiences, including the defining feature of the class of species we belong to. These are harms I did not yet understand by the time it was too late for me to seek damage from the credentialed medical providers who inflicted them on me, and likely still do not fully understand how they will impact the rest of my life. My understanding of what was done to me continues to evolve, and I learn new things about how it may impact my future quite frequently. Medical researchers have understood since the 90s that decisional regret and realization of harm takes an average of 8 to 10 years to surface, and the existing laws here in New Hampshire, like in many states across the nation, have yet to accommodate this reality. As was seen in my home state of Texas, banning these practices is not necessarily enough to prevent these interventions from being performed. The endocrinologist who put me on testosterone at 14, May Lau, is currently the subject of a lawsuit by the state of Texas for allegedly continuing to prescribe these interventions after the ban was passed in 2023. Another endocrinologist in El Paso has been alleged to have done similar, though I'm not sure of the status of that case. If the law is truly being followed, then there is really no reason not to pass this law. And if it isn't, this law would allow financial recourse to the victims of such crimes. This is not completely hypothetical, as it has played out in other states. Detransitioners are real, the harms we've suffered are real, and we deserve our days in court. I ask that you allow this by voting yes on this bill. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Seeing no questions, appreciate you coming in. Sorry for the ride. Does anyone else wish to testify on this bill? Seeing no others, that'll end the hearing.